Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. The topic on today's broadcast is election cybersecurity, keeping election polling accurate, fair, and secure. Today's primary speakers will be Denise Merrill, Secretary of the State of Connecticut, and Alex Russell, the head of an organization at the University of Connecticut that deals with cybersecurity.
So in 2016, when the nation found that 21 states at that time were identified as having been probed by Russian IP addresses right here in Connecticut, we were one of them, the Department of Homeland Security and other intelligence agencies decided to declare that elections are now critical infrastructure of the United States. That means that we are now eligible to harden our defenses against foreign attacks, because that's what it was. Since that time, and at the time I was president of our national association, the national secretaries of state have been unanimous in a nonpartisan way that we must do more to defend our elections. So at that time, we had to form a whole new relationship with these federal agencies that had not been in place before. We now have that. And so I want to just talk a little bit about what we've done since then as a state, building on a pretty good infrastructure to begin with, and to assure people that in Connecticut, we're doing a lot. I'm deeply grateful to Senator Blumenthal for his attention to this issue, because it desperately needs to be addressed at the federal level. The states simply don't have the kinds of resources that are needed to make sure that we're absolutely taking care of the defenses we need for our systems. But we did get $5 million from the federal government last year to be able to start down that path. And this, I always like to say, it's like a race without a finish. It's just like with your own home computers. You have to continually stay up to date on firewalls and all these protections that we now have in place for our own systems. So first I want to emphasize that the thing we're talking about is not the machine you vote on, the tabulators. Tabulators are not connected to the internet. However, we do have a statewide voter file that is not on the internet, but on a computerized system. It is a statewide computerized list. And that is the thing that was probed, that we are continually trying to make sure it is secure. I also like to point out that we have backups to all these systems. So to go back to what the senator was saying about what we heard from the intelligence agencies since that time, this continues. This is very serious. And it has actually ramped up even more from my understanding. So one thing that has happened since 2016 is myself and my IT director, who's here also and can answer maybe more detailed questions about some of this, have our security clearance. We are now regularly in touch with the security agencies, such as the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the National Security Committees, and so forth. And it is continuing. We've been told that much. And it is extremely well funded, primarily by Russia, but we now have other foreign actors that are involved. And it is largely a campaign of disinformation, because what we found is that, and by the way, those probes did not breach our systems. Nothing got in, at least in Connecticut, that we know of. But we don't even know exactly why it was happening, because our systems, as I said, have backups. It's a public list. Anyone can get the voter list. So it's not to get secret information. Maybe it was to change some of the names on the list, or maybe they were going to take names off or on. But even that, we do have backups of all these lists. So the conclusion generally is that it was to create chaos. And as you see today, we're here talking about it. So they've at least got our attention, don't they? So backing up from all that, we are doing everything we can to make sure that our voter list is secure and that our tabulators are secure in the sense that they do have a computer chip in the tabulator, but that we are taking care of modernizing our current system. And when we talk about we need resources, and we do, these tabulators have not been updated since the original Help America Vote Act, which came into place after the 2000 Hanging Chad election, famously revealed that we had some flaws in our election systems, at least in some states. So since that time, we've been using the same voter system as it was purchased in about 2003. Well, as you know, that's ancient history in computer time. So, so we are now looking at putting into place a committee to look at the future. Where are we going from here? We are going to need to replace this equipment. It's extremely expensive. The first time we purchased all the voting equipment from, with money from the federal government. That is not forthcoming at the moment. The only thing we've seen is the $5 million that Senator Blumenthal fought for, and thank goodness for that, because we are now able to do some of the things that I will describe a little bit, and then I'm going to turn this over to Alex Russell, who's director of something called the Yukon Voting Center. It's at the University of Connecticut. It's in the computer science department, and we have their services to check our equipment, to do all kinds of sort of security work for us. It is a unique relationship in the country, and we're very proud of the work we've done, and I think it's enabled us to come a long way in making sure that Connecticut, at least, is a model for the country. So I'll just, the only other thing I'd like to describe for you today is what we're doing with that $5 million that I feel is so important. We're doing a number of things. It's largely focused on the local level, because what we've found is that the vulnerabilities in some, particularly some of the small towns that don't have the resources to be able to secure these systems the way we can at the state level. So just to make the public understand, we house the list, but the list is all managed at the local level with 169 towns with all different capacities to do IT. Some of them don't have IT directors. Some of them barely have computers. So we are busy making sure they are running the most recent version of Microsoft 10. I don't know, I went to a meeting in Washington a few weeks ago to talk about the fact that Microsoft 7 will no longer have support from Microsoft. Some of our towns are still running our elections on Microsoft 7. So we are busy upgrading and making sure our towns have the capacity to upgrade their computer systems so they're all secure. We're going to put in place something called a virtual desktop, and perhaps Alex Russell and others can describe to you more aptly what that is, but essentially it enables us to help the local election officials manage the list. And we're doing a number of other things in terms of more interaction with some of the federal agencies that are charged with helping us, and they have been enormously helpful up till now. But DHS does not have the capacity to help every state. And so, again, the federal government must step up here to harden these defenses. And if we're critical infrastructure of the United States, as they have said we are, and we are, think of it like a power grid or a dam. That is the importance that they have ascribed to the election process. We cannot have our democracy disrupted. And that's why those of us who are charged with this are keenly aware that we need to do everything we can. Listen, nothing's perfect. We all know that. You've seen the breaches across the country in all kinds of organizations and banks and commercial outlets. But we don't have the luxury of being able to be casual about this. We can't afford a 5% drop-off rate or any of that. We have to be bright. And we're lucky. We have paper ballots. We have local election officials who are on the job. So our job will be to make sure they have the resources they need to be able to carry off these elections. So I'm going to stop there and allow Alex Russell from the Yukon Voter Center to describe some of the things that they do for us that enable Connecticut to have such a great system. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Great, thanks so much for all the kind words. I should open my comments by saying that as a security researcher, anytime we hear about politicians talking about channeling more money and resources and energy to security, it warms my heart. So I'm delighted to hear that. And as Secretary Merrill says, if you're a security researcher, your opinion is always that there is more to do about security. And let me tell you a little bit about what we have been doing at the Voting Technology Research Center, and some future things that we'd like to explore. Maybe I should open that by saying that the relationship between the UConn Voting Technology Center and the state is one that I think is truly unique. If you're a resident of Connecticut, I think you can be really proud of your state for inaugurating that relationship. Among the many other things that we do, perhaps one of the most important services that we provide to the state is a opportunity for the state government to interact with unbiased scientists whose interests are really only in providing security. We don't get involved in political issues. We focus entirely on the science. So what do? So the center essentially has two major activities. The first is to audit and assess actual electronic voting technology. So those are the tabulators we use in the state, e-poll book solutions, things like that. And indeed, the center was originally involved in the selection of the machines that Secretary Merrill pointed out are now showing their age. The second arm of our activities really focuses on auditing. And that has two major divisions of effort. The first is auditing the electronic cards that are used to actually program the tabulators in the state. So every tabulator across the state on election day has to know how to process the ballots that it receives. And all of that information is contained on a memory card that is plugged into the machine and then incidentally also maintains the votes that are cast on the day of the election. So one important role that we have is to audit those memory cards after the election. That means the memory cards are sent to us. We have a number of forensic programs that we run on those cards to look at the logs, to look at the programming on the cards, and this allows us to detect any anomalies. Interestingly, it also gives us a window into the actual day of elections operations at the actual precincts. And this is also an important tool we can use to make sure that all of our registrars of voters are on the same page and are using uniform mechanisms to carry out the elections on election day. Finally, for me personally, the most exciting part of the auditing process involves actually auditing the final vote tally at certain precincts in the state. So the Technology Research Lab has written what is now a quite sophisticated tool that permits us to retabulate the actual physical ballots cast by voters to come up with an independent tally. And this gives us a way to get very high precision information about any possible misbehavior or error of an electronic voting tabulator. So maybe I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you.
How long does that audit take?
Thank you for asking that excellent question. So in the old days, audits were carried out by humans. And that's slow and expensive. And as you can imagine, humans are notoriously error prone when it comes to sitting in a room hour after hour counting ballots. So the audit station is comparatively much quicker. That is, you slide the ballots through a scanner, it shows an image of each ballot going by. In principle, you can audit a ballot, any ballot in a couple of seconds.
On today's WIHS Journal, Election Cybersecurity. Speakers, Alex Russell from UConn and Secretary of the State, Denise Merrill. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. I'm Paul Kretschmer. The WIHS Journal is public affairs from WIHS, Middletown.